tim 2 pilih depan ya. Yang menang dapat tim pemerintah. Oke. Tim 2 pemerintah, tim satunya oposisi. Oke.
Group representative, please list your member with this format. Opposition team. Okay, good morning everyone. Today's motion is TH regrets facing diplomacy. Before we start, I will do a roll call. Are all member of the government side present?
Present.
And the opposition side?
Opposition side present.
Is the educator here?
Here.
Okay, we can start the debate now. But first, I will explain the rules. For all speaker, you can talk for 5 minutes and 20 seconds, and for concluding speaker, you have 4 minutes and 20 seconds. I will inform the time of the speaking in the chat. I will inform the 3 times, 1 minute, 1 minute pass, 4 minute pass, and 5 minute pass. For point of interest, it will be opened when the first minute has passed and close at the 4 minute. Point of interest will be limited to 1 minute only. I invite the speaker from the government team to start the debate.
Good morning, educators, fellow teammates, and opponents. On today's motion, this House regrets vaccine diplomacy. The government bench would like to tell you their opinions, especially why we agree that the world we propose should be accepted and implemented later for the great future. Before that, we would like to defend several phrases in order to gain middle ground in the debates. Vaccine is a product that stimulates a person's immune system to produce immunity to a specific disease, protecting the person from that disease. Vaccines are usually administered through needle injection, but can also administered by mouth or spray into the nose. Vaccine diplomacy is the use of vaccine to improve country diplomatic relationship and influence of other countries. With no limitation, it would be great if the debate affects the world, considering pandemic and the status quo currently affects the whole world. For the goal is to have a world where the vaccine will be shared internet without any hidden diplomacy. For the status quo is the decades and years have passed with pandemic left and right. The current one that we face are still going. According to our group, India and China are too rushed to not very effective, and the effect is not ideal. For more detailed argument will be explained by the second speaker, Rafli. That's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, sorry. Speaker 1, team government, speak for 1 minute 36 seconds. Next, followed by speaker 1, team opposition.
Thank you for the moderator for the opportunity. So I am the first speaker from the opposition team, and I would like to give you some information towards today's motion, which is this House regrets vaccines diplomacy. However, we are not agree with the motion, and we wouldn't regret the vaccine diplomacy that is happening in our world right now. So first thing first, we need to know the situation of our world right now. We are in a situation of the COVID-19 pandemic, and it's like what has been explained by the first speaker from the government team, that we are in the pandemic for 1 year already. However, the first speaker from the government team couldn't really explain any argument from their team, and why should we regret the vaccine diplomacy. And it's just nonsense for them to talk that they agree with the motion, but they do not bring any valid arguments, and they do not even try to explain the argument that they are trying to bring. So moving on to the opposition side of the house to talk. So I would like to give some introduction for our team first. So I am the Alita as the first speaker from the opposition side of the house, and I'm going to bring you some goals and arguments regarding today's motions. And the second speaker from our side will give you some arguments and explain furthermore about the arguments that we are trying to bring. And the third speaker are going to give you some stronger and strengthen our arguments and explain furthermore about our reasons why we should not agree with today's motion. So vaccine diplomacy is also a form of global responsibility to realize the mission of global peace and prosperity. Of course, this is a very important thing that we are trying to pursue the global peace and also the prosperity, because we all know that today's up until now, the global have a lot of have a lot of problems and have a lot of issues that are going on, including the pandemic right now. So in order to fight and solve all of these troubles and issues, we need to have the mission of global peace and the prosperity. Therefore, the vaccine diplomacy is one of the form of the global responsibility to realize this this mission. So this means to create global peace and prosperity. One of the way to do so is by getting the protection and the security from the threat coming from the countries. The threat in here means that the COVID-19 pandemic that is going on right now, which is the coronavirus, we all know that the coronavirus is going to give us a lot of side effects when we get the COVID-19 or the coronavirus disease. It has a lot of symptoms and anything else, and it's just so bad that it can cause a lot of deaths in all of the countries, and therefore we are trying to solve this problem, including the coronavirus disease, by giving the protection and security through the vaccines. And the vaccine diplomacy is one of the forms to realize this thing. And our goal in today's debate is that we would like to show that vaccine diplomacy as an effort to reach the cooperation in providing COVID-19 vaccines and medicines in order to be reachable for every citizen in every countries to be realized. So our first argument is that we do not agree with today's motion, and we would not regret vaccine diplomacy because it is actually a mutualism for the countries in charge. For example, like how just like how the Philippines will send their health worker to China in returns that they are going to get the vaccines. It is can be said that it is a vaccine diplomacy because they are having bilateral cooperation. However, um, it is actually a mutualism symbiosis because Philippines will get the vaccines, meanwhile China will get the health worker, which is really good for both countries. So it is not like a very bad thing that vaccine diplomacy is happening in the world right now, because it is actually giving us so many benefits and profits from this vaccine diplomacy, not only in Philippines or also China. In our beloved country, Indonesia is also trying to do so by our Kemenlu or foreign ministry is also trying to doing the vaccines diplomacy by conducting bilateral collaborations with the other countries such as China, Arab, Switzerland, and England. This somehow shows that how our country really care about our country citizens' health and anything else, and they are trying to do their best for our country. Therefore, we believe that this motion should fall. Thank you.
Okay. Speaker one, team opposition, speak for 4 minutes, 52 seconds. Next, followed by speaker two, team government.
Okay. My preferred POI preference would be through chat, and I will start my debate in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, fellow adjudicators, fellow teammates, and fellow opponents. I'm Rafli, would be the second speaker of the government side of the house, and would like to tell you on the opinions or on our stances on today's motion, which is this house regrets the vaccine diplomacy. Okay, I think that it is pretty clear that our stances as a team on where we stand, honorable judges, that we very much agree with today's motion. But before moving on to my arguments, I would like to give some clarifications while also giving some rebuttals to the first speaker of the opposition side of the house. Here's the thing, judges. We do know that we live in a realistic world, but the thing that we, the government side of the house, regrets are the main point that has been brought by the first speaker of the opposition. Here is the example in the arguments that they have brought. Philippines would trade their healthcare workers to work to China to gain the vaccines itself. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this proves that China, who still has the most powerful or who still are deemed as the most powerful country itself, um, it proves that the China itself still needs someone help. So what we would like to propose is that from the urgencies and the goal of the team would be it would be better if the world that we live in are the world without the term of diplomacy itself, ladies and gentlemen, where all countries work together. We would want all countries to participate in the making of vaccines that are suitable to their country, considering that they have different characteristics. Now, China early diplomatic has gained success on distributing vaccines, such as the Sinovac or Sinopharm. We do find it helpful, even with a pretty low efficacy. Vaccine diplomacy is the same type of diplomacy where, at the other hand, it will leave or gain benefits to only one country itself. What do we actually mean by this, judges? Number one, it would be a solo purposes for the country who conducted the researchers to gain their own benefit. One country are trying to find a new face, a new victims, or maybe a new ally to support its big mega project. Little information for all the teams right here is that there would be let's say a conference or maybe a treaty where all countries needs to sign for a project to be passed, maybe such as in the United Nations or maybe the UNDP or maybe some ECOSOC type of council. For example, China, who still are deemed as a powerful country, are going to build this big mega project called the BRI or the Belt Road Initiative, where it connects all of the countries itself. So China can have a route such as we can say an example of a modern Silk Road, ladies and gentlemen. The use of vaccine diplomacy later on, not only to find certain partners and creating the image that the country is very helpful and powerful, but it is also an act of symbolism where Beijing's vaccine diplomacy involves propaganda to boost perceptions of China as a generous and responsible power. Chinese media has covered every delivery of vaccine shipment, but it is also not only China, ladies and gentlemen. There could be India's vaccine research that have been very conducted very poorly, while also the Russian vaccines. The scene is set by a standard script. When a cargo plane lands on each countries that they are willing to help, it is greeted by senior local leaders accompanied by Chinese ambassadors fawning over the vaccine cargo. Remember when the first dose of the vaccines have arrived everywhere? Those countries who developed the vaccines, such as India and Russia and others, would report the hell out of it, ladies and gentlemen, to prove their own citizens that they have maintained a great partner with other countries, while also to prove that they are worthy enough to be the power for those countries to seek during this tough time. The opposition side of the house have also brought the example of Indonesia itself, ladies and gentlemen. What do you think if Indonesia could actually attend the vaccine diplomacy? It would not be very impossible, right? Because we don't have those kind of power. So what do we mean by this is that this kind of vaccine diplomacies only give the powers to those countries who already hold the power itself, such as China, India, Russia. Now these three countries, or maybe even the EU and Americas, these three countries, or maybe they're all allies, already gain a big power to have their contribution to the world, and it would be a proof or maybe even a better proof that those developing countries doesn't have the opportunities to help with the vaccine itself. Let's say our own country itself, we have developed what we call as maybe vaccine Merdeka, or no, vaccine Nusantara, if I'm not mistaken. And look at the end of it, we failed to create those kind of vaccines. So this is what we mean by that we are regretting the vaccine diplomacy because we don't have the power to cooperate with other countries. While in our urgencies and in our goals, we would like to we would like to have some cooperation, maybe with the ASEAN body itself, or maybe with Malaysia, or maybe Singapore, any kind of countries that are very close to us, to create one vaccines together without the sole purposes to create some type of diplomacy, or maybe to create some type of money. Vaccine diplomacy has helped increase China's influence and enabled it to capitalize on new opportunities. So this is what we so what we meant as the government side of the house is that we do agree with the today's motion that we regret the type of vaccine diplomacy because it only gives power to the existing powers of the holders. Thank you.
Okay, speaker to team government speak for 5 minutes 48 seconds. Next, followed by speaker to team opposition.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, moderator, adjudicators, and fellow audiences. I would like to rebut the second speaker of the government about China giving out vaccines. Why is China giving out vaccines is said by the West as an act of diplomacy, and the West doing the same, and it is said COVID relief and humanitarian act. This is so biased and unfair. The goal of giving out vaccines is to help the world in relieving the COVID pandemic or any other pandemics. And then for the propaganda point, they also said this boost propaganda that China has high power. However, it can be declined that China is indeed one of the countries that has a high power in terms of business and digital, even without the vaccine diplomacy itself. This shouldn't be said that China is getting a lot of power only because the vaccine diplomacy. There is no such effect of vaccine diplomacy, just like what the government side of the house's second speaker trying to say. And I would like to continue with some of our arguments. Vaccine diplomacy shows bilateral cooperation in the form of vaccines, and it is a mitigation towards COVID-19 handlings. Vaccine diplomacy also helps poor countries. They receive donations in the form of vaccines that they cannot afford and help the poor countries to recover from a pandemic. Not only poor countries, the world will also benefit from vaccine diplomacy. Like China, for example, they offer to donate 500,000 of vaccines to a lot of countries like the Philippines. And lastly, vaccine diplomacy will speed up virus eradication. If said countries that have the ability to make vaccines and they practice vaccine diplomacy, this will speed up the recovery of a pandemic. I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Okay, speaker to team opposition speak for 2 minutes 13 seconds. Next, followed by speaker 3 team government.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning, adjudicators and the moderators. I will start in 3, 2, 1. Like a millionaire selling gold to poor people on the edge of the city in difficult time, a country is not ethic when it does business with the people, which means that the existence of a vaccine and new virus mutation means the threat between countries regarding vaccine is no longer valid because a vaccine or trade cannot cope with the new virus mutation. The jury introduced me Novian as a third speaker from the team pro. I have the task of completing or summarizing the journey of our debate today, and also to explain the best scenario that our team has offered. The main purpose of the motion given is in line with our team goal, namely where a diplomatic relationship regarding vaccination are not effective in a country because of a first mutation that country to develop new, because the diplomacy itself is currently only carried out by China is making vaccine and selling them to other countries. And yes, the goal of a vaccine is to help with the COVID, but the thing that we are talking is that China itself has their own hidden intentions, such as looking for areas and signatories to approve the Belt Road Initiative project, or India to find allies to them give back to the country. Just like the first speaker emphasized at the school, where each country are required to give to the other country back after giving half. And second, China has a big power because it is one of the 5 countries that has a veto power, which is a very powerful because you can vote a policy. Not only the China has great allies, while let's say Pulau or Micronesia Island have not great relationship. Let me give an example of the shortcoming in the implementation of vaccination diplomacy. There is a country where the Sinovac that is carried out independently by China is considered less effective by a big country like America is overcoming COVID-19. And let me clarify our team's argument in providing solution regarding the ineffectiveness of diplomacy vaccination. It will be better for all countries to work together and make vaccination so that it will be much more effective for the country itself to overcome the COVID-19 pandemic compared to one country moving on its own and selling it to other country because of the first mutation that keeps changing so that Sinovac. The ones made by China are not effective in mutation the new virus. And in the future, we will need another vaccine to deal with the new mutation, and it will lean towards the vaccine business, or what we call the pharmaceutical mafia. And thank you.
Speaker 3, team government speak for 3 minutes 45 seconds. And next followed by speaker 3, the team opposition.
I'm the third speaker from opposition team 9, and I would like to give some rebuttals from government team that they're saying China and India trying to find allies. However, we need to know that that the every countries do not only during the Persian diplomacy or only during the pandemic. This can happen anytime. House is trying to find allies to gain mutual benefits for each other is that thing. I agree with speaker this the first speaker and the second speaker from my team that they said vaccine diplomacy how bilateral cooperation in the form vaccine and it is a mitigation towards COVID-19 handlings mutualists from the countries in charge several countries will receive help from the vaccine and the other countries in other forms. For example, like how the Philippines would send their health worker to China in return of the vaccines. Vaccine diplomacy helps poor countries and they receive donation in the form of vaccine that they cannot afford and help the poor countries to recover from COVID pandemic. And not only the poor countries, the world will benefit from vaccine diplomacy, like China from, for example, they offer to donate 500,000 vaccine to a lot of countries like the Philippines. Vaccine diplomacy will speed up virus eradication if said countries that have the ability to make vaccines and they practice vaccine diplomacy. This will speed up the recovery of a pandemic. Thank you.
Okay, speaker 3, team opposition speak for 3 minutes, 7 seconds. Next, followed by conclusion speaker, team opposition.
Okay, thank you for moderator for the opportunity. So good morning, ladies and gentlemen. So towards our adjudicator. So in today's motion, which is this council regrets vaccine diplomacy, we as the Contra team is trying to we believe that this motion should fall and should not stand. Why so? And now here I am. I would like to explain why should the Contra team win this debate instead of the government team. So first thing first, the first speaker from the government side couldn't even explain their argument well. They couldn't even try to explain why they want to agree towards this motion and why should they believe that today's motion should stand and should not fall. So also moving on, the government side of the house is also being biased and they don't even try to argue with this when the counter team try to point out about this point that they are being biased towards west and east countries. This means that the government side of the house are agree of what we are trying to say to them that they are being biased towards the west and the east countries. Is it can be seen from from the arguments from the government side when they say that the China giving out vaccines is said as the vaccine diplomacy when meanwhile from when the West countries try to give out the vaccines is called as the COVID relief and the humanitarian act. This is very unfair and very biased. When the contract team tried to point out that point, the government side of the house didn't even try to argue with that. So moving on, they also said that the vaccine diplomacy boosts propaganda that China has a high power. However, they forget that even before the COVID-19 pandemic, China is already one of the country that have the high power in the term of business and digital. So the things that the government side of the house is trying to explain about that China is gaining a lot of power by doing the vaccine diplomacy and anything else is just invalid and it's not true. And also the government side of the house also try to say that China and India trying to finalize is a bad thing. Meanwhile, we all know that bilateral cooperation or bilateral collaboration is a thing that always happened even before the pandemic happened. This is cannot be explained or cannot be mentioned as one of the effect that occurred just because of vaccine diplomacy, ladies and gentlemen. And so my adjudicator. So moving on to the arguments that has been brought by the opposition side of the house, which is the first that it is actually a mutualism for the countries in charge. Just like what the first speaker of the opposition side has explained, that the several countries will receive help from the vaccine and the other countries in other forms. For example, just like what the example has been brought by the first speaker from the opposition side, then it is just like how the Philippines would send their health worker to China in return that China will give out their vaccines to Philippines. It is of course a very mutualism thing and a beneficial thing for both of the countries. And the second argument that is brought by the speakers from the opposition side is that the vaccine diplomacy shows bilateral cooperation in the form of vaccines, and it is a mitigation towards COVID-19 handlings. Of course, we all know that the COVID-19 is happening everywhere, the lockdown is happening everywhere too, and a lot of side effects are occurring because of the COVID-19 pandemic, just like the economics and anything else. So therefore, we agree that the vaccine diplomacy is a good thing and is actually a bilateral cooperation in the form of vaccines and a mitigation towards COVID-19 handlings. And also, the third argument that the Contra team trying to bring is that vaccine diplomacy actually help the poor countries because they receive the donation in the form of vaccines that they cannot afford, of course, because they are poor countries. And the vaccine diplomacy also help the poor countries to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic because we all just like what the speakers have tried to explain before that there are a lot of side effects or the things that happen because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And not only the poor countries, the world will also benefit the vaccine diplomacy. Just like China, for example, they offer to donate half a million of vaccines to a lot of countries in the world. And one of the example of the country that they are trying to give is that the Philippines. And also the fifth arguments that the counter team is trying to bring is that this vaccine diplomacy will speed up the various education if, say, countries that have the ability to make vaccines that they practice vaccine diplomacy. So therefore, I believe that the counter team should win this debate instead of the government side of the house. Thank you.
Okay, concluding speaker team opposition speak for 4 minutes 46 seconds. Next followed by concluding speaker team government.
I will start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Good morning, everyone. As the reply speaker of the government side of the House, I would like to tell you the conclusion on how this debate goes, and especially the reason on why the government team should win this kind of the debate. Okay, our team, especially on the third speaker, have rebutted all claims given by the opposition side of the House, especially on their second speaker of the opposition side of the House, where they claim that the first speaker of the government side claim fails, especially on the China power. They try to prove that China power is only in the technological side and already have existed before the vaccine itself. While our third speaker clarifies again that China is one of the 5 countries that have veto rights, where it proves that China has a very big power in the regulation revolves around the world. This clash should be won by our team because what we mean is that China already has a lot of power and will gain more power from this vaccine diplomacy because they are the only country that gives vaccines out to at least 50 countries. Now look where that stands, ladies and gentlemen, where we do think that it is already a clear point how powerful China is and how will they be more powerful after giving out handouts such as vaccines itself. Not only that, throughout the speakers, the opposition side of the House have blundered over their own argument, and it is being used as a case to attack the first speaker opposition on arguments. The government side take the case where in the status quo of the opposition side, countries are expected to give back, while in our side of the House, we would like the world where the countries cooperate to each other to research the vaccine itself without thinking to give back to the others. This also proves that throughout the first to the third speaker of the opposition, they think that the idea of bilateral relationship is only exclusive on their side of the world, where we already give examples and vision that we want to create a relationship between countries to conduct the research, which ultimately create those relationships. These arguments have been brought by the second speaker of the government side of the house, talking about the EU cooperation or maybe the ASEAN cooperation, such as the Indonesia, Malaysia, and Singapore research conducting in vaccines. The opposition thinks that China is giving out vaccines for free to the poor country, where in reality, some countries pay for the vaccine itself, ladies and gentlemen, or maybe pay it with other way, just like the idea of Philippines giving their healthcare workers to work under the China government, which really contradicts their whole argument because the vaccine is free, but the country needs to repay back. So can we actually count it as a free, judges? From the first speaker of the government, we already give out our goals, our urgencies, and the definition and others. And we do stand still very strong that our stances here is that we agree that the vaccine diplomacy should not be implemented, and we do really regret it very much. While on the second speaker, we explained thoroughly on how those big countries who developed the vaccine diplomacy itself did the most extra thing, such as inviting reporters or making out a big deal out of it, or maybe they have some hidden intention and others. And this kind of points have never been rebutted by the second or maybe by the third speaker of the opposition side of the house. So we do think that these 2 points is a winning point for the government side of the house, since it has not been touched even very lightly by the opposition side of the house. So by all that conclusion, we do think as the government side of the house that this motion should stand, because we do really regret the idea of the vaccine diplomacy, and we still want the world where vaccine diplomacy is not exist, and that all countries should work together to conduct the vaccine itself, which from all the points that still stands, the government side of the house should win this debate. Thank you.
Okay. Concluding speaker, team government speak for 3 minutes 58 seconds. Okay. Thanks for the debate. Please given the judge time to discuss the result first.
Okay, hello everyone. Okay, I will announce the result for today's debate. This is quite difficult because both team are very strong in their argument. But however, the opposition team is only played around Asia, not Europe and America. So for this debate, I want I give the winner to the government team because their point and data are quite detailed and support each other's argument for their members. Okay, I think that's all. Thank you. I give to the moderator.
Thank you, Adjudicator.
Okay, since the results are out, this round is declared over. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Moderator. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you.
Thank you.